right. Well, shalom, everybody. Welcome to Intermediate Hebrew. We are on week number 8. The notes for this class you can find at theregathering.com/page/PFT Hebrew 2. You do have to have an account at The Regathering to access those. And all past classes in the intermediate and beginning classes can be found on YouTube at the Passion for Truth video channel. So just look for Hebrew class on there and you'll be sure to find it. This is week number 8. So after this we'll move on to advanced, which is really just a continuation of intermediate. It's not any more difficult material. So a quick review of kind of what we covered last week. Last week we talked about pronouns. And I do have, if you don't have them with you, I do have stuff from last week on those chairs. So, okay, so pronouns. Last week we talked about the third person pronouns and the first person pronouns. Okay, so the third person, the singular, are who and he. Who and he. Who means H-E, he, and he means S-H-E, she. So that shouldn't be confusing at all. Who is he and he is she? So if a Hebrew-speaking person, if you're a woman and a Hebrew-speaking person calls you he, they're being accurate, they're not confused. So who is he and he is she, and then the plural, haim, they or them, masculine, and hain, they or them, feminine. Okay? So if you use hain, you're referring to a group of exclusively feminine people or objects. Haim can be either all masculine or a mixed group. You always default to the masculine when you have a mixed group. Or when you don't know the gender, you default to who. Default to the masculine as well. Okay? And I also mentioned that the third person pronouns can be used for objects as well as people. Because every word in Hebrew, every noun in Hebrew has a gender, you don't refer to objects as it, you refer to them as he or she. Right? It's not that they actually have a literal gender, but they have a grammatical gender, and so they are referred to grammatically as he or she. Okay? And then we also talked about the first person pronouns. In the singular, anochi. Anochi is I, or me. And the short form, ani, is exactly equivalent to that. So anochi or ani, either one can be I or me. And we or us is anachnu. Oh, right. Yeah, I am the way, ve'amet, v'chachayim. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Yes, he would have said anochi. Or possibly ani. Either one is, but both are used in the scriptures, so. But yes.
So that would be, depending on who wrote it.
Right. Yeah, they're exactly equivalent. One's just a short form, and you'll find both You'll find Anochi much more frequently in the Torah, but you'll also find Ani. So,
I was told that Anihu was reserved specifically for God, for Yahweh. So Jews don't say that. If they say, "Are you George?" they would not say Anihu.
oh, they would not say, "I am he."
Because supposedly that's what Yeshua said was Anihu, and that's when they ripped his garments because he was expressing, "I am."
Oh, okay. I've never heard that. I'm trying to think where Anihu would have been used in the Old Testament. Can't think of anything offhand. I'll have to look into that. Right, yeah, no, I know that. I'm trying to think why it would be a restricted phrase, though. Like why they would say that's referring to God. But yeah, I'll have to look into that. But anyway, the first person, there's no distinction in gender. Okay, so a man or woman can say Anochi or Ani. A group, whether it's men, women, or mixed, says Anachnu. Okay, so in the first person, there's no gender distinction. The third person, there is. Okay. All right, so this week we will talk about the second person pronouns. Now, in English, we have only one second person pronoun. Y-O-U. Okay, we use this to refer to one man, one woman, multiple men, and multiple women. We say you. Hebrew has 4. Okay, so the masculine singular is ata. Okay, so this is you, masculine singular. So referring to a single man, well, not necessarily, he could be married, but just one of him. You. Okay, ata. 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 Actually, ani, but you would call me ata. Okay. A woman is at. Okay, at is the feminine singular. Okay. So ata and at. That's differentiation between masculine and feminine. But then a group, we're talking to you all, okay, or you plural. A group of men or a mixed group is atem. Okay, atem. And a group of women, aten. Right, so ata, at, atem, and aten. And today we would translate all of these as you in English. There was a time, though, that we would have differentiated between the singular and plural. And that's in the older English days when thou was the form of the singular second person. So in the King James, that's why the King James has thou and you. Thou isn't just an older form of you, it actually specifically means you singular. That's why God's always referred to as thou. Okay? And when King James uses the word you, the Old King James uses you, it's referring to a group, you, plural. Okay, so one neat thing about the King James is it does actually make that distinction. Okay, whereas modern translations, you just see you, and You'd have to determine from context if it's talking to a single individual or to a group. Sometimes context doesn't tell you.
Object or a qualifier, you girls, you people.
Right. Right. Or, the southern,
Fellas.
y'all. Yeah, southern American English dialect uses y'all.
Thou hast done that thing, that person. You have transgressed, or all have done.
It doesn't point out, how does it point out with the masculine?
It does not point out gender. It just differentiates between singular and plural. So you as in just you, or you as in both of you. Yeah, it's in English today we don't make that distinction and we don't think about it much, but Hebrew has 4 forms and Old English had 2 forms. So
when it says you and then it drops down and it talks about a man, is that specifically geared towards a man, the transition, or could it not be?
Context.
Well, if the term ata is used, you're talking to a man. Okay, so I wouldn't call you ata, but I would call Ron ata. I would call you at.
God spoke to Moses and said, you have done this. And he's speaking to Moses.
Right. So, speaking to one man, ata, one woman, at. Okay. A mixed group or a group of men, atem, a group of women, aten. And this the third person we can wrap our minds around. The only weird thing is the distinguishing between the gender of a group, which we don't do in English, but we do in Hebrew. But the second person, since we only have one English word for that now, you really have to think about it when you're using the correct pronoun, because they're still all translated the same way. Okay. So those are the second person pronouns. So any questions about pronouns in general? Oh, and again, if you look up a pronoun in a dictionary, it will be noted like this: mem double hash mark gimel. It stands for milat goof, which means milat goof. Milat goof is a pronoun, and it literally means name of a body. Or, I'm sorry, word of a body. Okay? So if you look up a word in a dictionary and it has mem double hash mark gimel, you know that word is a pronoun.
Word of a body.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions about pronouns? Okay. Okay. Well, continuing our prepositional prefixes. Last week, we talked about 3 new prefixes. Of course, the he indicates the definite article, the word the. And the vav is a prefix, means and. Then last week we went over the bait prefix, the kaf prefix, and the lamed prefix. All right, and bait as a prefix means in or with. Kaf as a prefix means like, as, similar to. And lamed as a prefix means to or for. Okay? And these prefixes, when they're used in this sense, always have a shva beneath them. Okay, so in a house, okay, house is bayit. So in a house, we put a bait at the beginning to make bayit. Okay, in a house. If something is for a man, lamed prefix in front of ish. Okay, so le'ish, for a man. Or it could be to a man, just depends on context. Okay, and the kaf is used exactly the same way. Okay. Like a man would be ka'ish, okay, with a man, ba'ish. Right, so all these prefixes can be put directly, attached to words to add a preposition to the beginning of the word. Okay, so we can have separate prepositions. This ka corresponds exactly to the preposition kemo, which is written separately. Yeah, if you have the intermediate notes from last week, it should have those in there somewhere. Yes. Yeah, kemo was a word from week 5, I believe. Or maybe it was week 6. But anyway, well, when we talked about prepositions, it should be on the preposition sheet. I don't think I had it in the actual vocabulary list. But kemo means like or as, and when you say kemo, you're using it as a totally separate word. It's a separate preposition.
It's printed right here in front of me, sorry.
No problem. So yeah, kemo is a totally separate word, but it can be shortened to just a kaf as a prefix put in front of a word. Okay. So it's just like with any prepositional prefix in English. Okay, we can say, I am against taxes, or you can say I'm anti-taxes. Okay, anti being a prefix, okay, meaning against. So this functions the same way. You can use a separate preposition or a prefix to illustrate the same idea. Now the bait does not have an equivalent separate preposition, so there's no other preposition that would mean in or with. There's others that do mean with, but they don't mean with in the same sense as the bait. They mean with in the sense of alongside, whereas the bait means with as in using. So if you're doing something, with a pen, okay, it'd be b. I think pen is 8, but I haven't gone over the word for pen yet. But anyway, if you the sense of utility is expressed by the bait, okay, for with, whereas alongside would be a separate preposition. Yeah, with a hammer, with with a surfboard, with whatever. Right. But if you're with somebody else, okay, or alongside somebody else, you'd use there's a different preposition for that, which I haven't gone over yet. The lamed loosely corresponds to L, but it doesn't exactly correspond to L because the Lamed actually has more uses than L does. L means toward, and it always indicates direction. Okay. But Lamed can mean for in a possessive sense, or in a sense of use. Okay, this is for a man. Okay, it's not necessarily going to a man, but it's for him. Okay. So those are the three prepositional prefixes I covered last week. Okay, so there's one more in Biblical Hebrew, one more prepositional prefix. And I will cover that now. And that is the mem. Now, the mem does have an exact equivalent that's a totally separate word. Okay, the word min, which means from, can also be shortened to just a mem prefix in front of a word. The vowel that usually accompanies the mem is a chirik, and when this is the case, the letter that immediately follows the mem will take a dagesh. So if something is from a house, mibayit, okay, from a house, or from a field. Misadeh. Okay, sadeh is a field. Misadeh would be from a field. Okay? So in front of most words, the mem will take a chirik vowel, and the letter immediately following the mem will take a dagesh. Okay? However, in front of words that begin with an aleph, a hey, a ayin, or a resh, instead the mem will take a tzera vowel. Okay? So from a tree would be me'etz. Okay? Me'etz, from a tree. Or from him. Okay, if we're going to, let's incorporate some pronouns into this too. Him would be who. Okay, who is he or him. Okay, so may who, from him. Because that starts with a hey. Okay, so aleph, hey, ayin, and resh. When the mem prefix precedes any of those letters, it'll take a tzera instead of a chirik. So mi or may are your two possibilities. Okay? And in any of these cases, you could just use the word min as a separate preposition instead of the mem prefix. The two are entirely interchangeable. Right. And the mem prefix. So we could say min bayit from a house or mi bayit from a house. Okay, we could say min eitz from a tree or may eitz from a tree. Okay, it's just a question of whether we have a totally separate preposition, totally separate word, or if we directly prefix this mem to a word. Okay, they're exactly equivalent. It's just a question of style, really. And you'll see both. As usual, you'll see both in the scriptures.
So you would more likely say min
Right, and that's what we're going to go into next is what do you do when you've got multiple prepositional prefixes? Because you could. Now, some of them don't make sense. You couldn't say, with for. That doesn't make any sense. But you could say and with, or you could say with the, or from the. Okay, so how do you do that? And so yes, one option, of course, is when you do have a separate preposition that means the exact same thing, you could just separate out all the prepositions and state each one individually, or have a separate preposition followed by a prefix. Okay, but you can, in fact, combine the prefixes. So in the case of the mem, it's pretty straightforward how that's done. The only thing that could follow the mem would be a hey. You couldn't say from in or from with or from for or from like. Okay, those wouldn't really work. But you could say from the. And if you were to do that, since the definite article is indicated by a hey, all right, when we put a mem in front of that, because the letters will be written in word order, okay, in meaning order. So it's not the from, but it's from the. All right, the hey will follow the normal rules of definite articles. So it'll usually take a patach, but if it's in front of an aleph, an ayin, or a resh, it'll take a kametz. And then there's another possibility in which it takes a segel, which I haven't covered yet. But in any case, whatever rules would normally apply to the definite article will apply to this hey in this case. And the mem, because it's in front of a hey, will take a tzera. So meha, from the. So instead of from a house, if we were to say from the house, mehabayit. Okay. Or eretz, as you mentioned, eretz is land. Okay, the land is ha-eretz. It's actually ha-aretz, but that's just because eretz is a funny word. There are certain words that will actually change their vowels when the definite article is added to them, and eretz is one of them. So that's why you'll hear ha-aretz instead of ha-eretz, which you would expect to hear. But anyway, so ha-aretz is the land, from the land. Okay, me ha-aretz. Okay, and of course, in the blessing, they say min ha'aretz. They just use a separate preposition. Okay, both are equally valid. Okay, so when the mem combines with the hey, meha is what you'll wind up with. Okay, suppose it were to combine with the vav though, and from. All right, when the vav combines with any prefix, the vav always comes first. You could indeed have and from the. So and from the house. Yeah, I believe it would be v. Could be u, but we'll call it v for now. Whatever the case, the vav would come first. V mehabayit, and from the house. Okay. Now, you'll notice that how many of these letters actually belong to the noun that we're talking about? Yeah. House is the last half of the word. Okay. And then, when you add suffixes to it, you can reach a point where there are more letters in the prefixes and suffixes than in the actual word that you're talking about. Oh, yes. Now, you'll kind of, when you see a vav at the beginning of a word, yes, that's exactly why the rules are important. Yes, and knowing the roots is important too, especially when you get into verbs. In nouns, they'll pretty much stay together. If you can pick out the noun inside the word, you go, okay, I know what this is talking about. But I hear from people all the time who start to learn a little bit of Hebrew, and so they'll learn a few words, and then they'll start looking something up in a Strong's Concordance. And the Strong's has words listed by root. It does not have words listed by every single possible combination of prefixes and suffixes, and believe me, there are many. So a lot of times people get frustrated because they'll look up a word in the Strong's, and then they'll get a hold of an actual Hebrew text. So they'll find the verse the Strong's says contains that word, and they'll look at the word, and it looks nothing like the word that they're looking at in the Strong's. They say, something's wrong here. But the problem they're encountering is that the Strong's Concordance lists everything in order of root. So they don't list every single permutation because it would be about 10 times as thick if they did. So that's why the rules are important. That's why it's good to know these prepositional prefixes. They're pretty well essential to reading the Hebrew text. Okay? So, the mem combines with the definite article by going before it. The vav combines with anything by going before it. However, the other three prepositional prefixes combine in a different way with the definite article. Okay, so if we wish to combine the bait, the kaf, or the lamed prefix with the definite article prefix, there's a specific way that we have to do that. Now, in the case of mem, we simply use the mem followed by the hey, and follow the rules accordingly. But these combine in a different way. When any of these prefixes combine with the definite article, they will take the letter of this prefix along with the vowel that would accompany the definite article. So, in, b, it would be in, ha is the, in the, though, is ba. Okay? The letter from this prefix, the vowel from that one.
Also, drop the ha.
Yes, the hey drops off entirely. Become in the. So in the house, in a house would be babayit. Okay, this is in a house. In the house would be babayit. Okay, in the house. And another thing you'll notice here, the rule with the hey, with the definite article, is that the letter immediately following the definite article takes a dagesh. That carries through when these two are combined as well. So you'll see in a house, this first bait on bayit has lost its dagesh. But in the house, here it is because it follows the definite article. Okay, because ha bayit on its own, just the house, would have a dagesh. Okay, so any rule that applies to the definite article, Okay, so that applies to a word that takes the definite article, applies to that word when it takes the definite article combined as well. Okay, so kaf and he combine the same way. Ka and lamed and he combine as la. Okay, so ka by it, like the house, la by it, to the house or for the house. Okay. Another important note. Kaf is like. Like and to or for. You don't have to worry over much about this dagesh. It's one of those technicalities, but since I did go over it, I want to mention that it does carry through. That rule does carry through to the combinations. Okay. Another important note is suppose we were talking about the tree, ha'etz. Now, the rule with the definite article is that when it precedes an aleph, an ayin, or a resh, that the vowel under the he will be a kametz. So this is the tree. And that kametz will also carry through to the combination. So if we were to say in the tree, well, okay, just in a tree would be ba'etz. Okay, in a tree. In the tree, however, still pronounced ba'etz in our Sephardic dialect, but instead of a patach, we use the kametz just like we would use the kametz with the he. Ba'etz. So whichever vowel the he would use, the combined prefix will also use. So this vowel is a kametz, this will be a kametz, and in those rare cases where this vowel would be a segel, it'll stay a segel in the combination as well. Okay, so whichever vowel the definite article takes carries through to the combination. So, So you will find this distinction. Sometimes you'll find a prepositional prefix with a shva underneath it, sometimes with a different vowel, indicating a combination with the definite article. Okay, and again, it's the difference between in a house and in the house. Interestingly, you find this on the very first word in the Torah. Okay, Bereshit. The vowel underneath the beit is a shva. So it's not, you wouldn't technically literally translate it in the beginning. You can translate it in beginning. Okay, it doesn't mean it wasn't the first beginning, as it were. It doesn't mean it's not. Yes, yes, that's right. 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 Yes. As far as we need to know, that's the beginning. So, but yes, it is in fact pointed with a shva. So the definite article is not used. And there are some places where the interpretation is, it's a little more significant whether the definite article is used or not used. But anyway, that is how the beit, kaf, and lamed will combine with the definite article as prepositional prefixes. It'll take the letter from the normal preposition and the vowel from the definite article, combine them into one. Okay, the mem will separate between them. And of course, in front of any of these, any combination, any other prefix, you can always add a vav to mean and. Okay? So,
Fascinating to see it organized and defined
yeah, it's
instead of just, well, that's the way it is.
right. It looks a little scattered sometimes when you just pick up a text and look at it, but there is a structure to it. So that leaves us with 6 prefixes. Okay, he being the definite article, vav being and, beit being in or with, kaf meaning like, lamed meaning to or for, and the mem meaning from. Okay? And these are the 6 prefixes that you will find in the scriptures. In modern Hebrew, there are in fact even more, but I'm not going to go into those. But anyway, once you're reading texts, be on the lookout for words that begin with any of these letters. Okay. Now, there are, of course, many words that do begin with a he, vav, beit, kaf, lamed, or mem, but when you see this at the beginning, you can kind of automatically start thinking maybe this is a prefix. And a lot of times that'll make the word make a lot more sense once you look at it. Okay? But you will encounter these all the time because all of these are, of course, all these prepositions are, of course, very common words for use. Okay. Any questions about the prepositional prefixes? Okay. It is a lot to swallow. But that is the one thing about Hebrew that I'm no expert on world languages, but I have yet to notice that feature in other languages, is the sheer quantity of prefixes. And they're all single letters, that are directly attached to the word. Of course, English has plenty of prepositional prefixes, anything that starts with anti or sub or, even just the letter A, meaning not. All right. English is full of words like that, but usually those are fragments of other words and not just a letter that's attached to something. Okay, if English had words that, you just stick an O on the front of it and it means something else, that it'd be kind of rough reading English, frankly. But Hebrew does have that. Fortunately, not every letter can be a prefix. There's only 6. So you're at least limited in that regard. But, be aware as you're reading things. When you encounter words that start with any of those letters, especially the vav, a lot of times you'll be dealing with the prefix. So as we go on through the advanced class, we'll be seeing more and more examples of those. This is sort of just an intro to that. It's good to see a lot of examples in order to really get acquainted with them, but as we're constructing more and more sentences, you'll be incorporating those more and more. So we'll be reviewing again and again. I do want to touch on some of the vocabulary from this week. I believe this is the spelling of ahava. Ahava. Ahava is love. Yeah, the verb form would be a little bit different, but this is the Hebrew word for love. Of course, you'll hear people teach on like the difference between the Greek words that are all translated love, which have their technical differences. Hebrew really, I've heard people talk about different words that could be translated love. If you see love, it's ahava. More often than not. There's other words that mean other things, but the sense of being attached to someone or something, this is the idea conveyed by ahava. Another word, chesed. Chesed. Chet samech dalet. Chesed you'll frequently see translated as mercy. I actually prefer the translation kindness. Not that my opinion means anything special, but the reason I prefer that is because there are cases where mercy, in the sense of, avoiding judgment, doesn't really make sense in the context of where this is used. It's more an act of, just a benevolent act. Yeah, just.
The song, and that one shows mercy and say this.
Right. Yeah, it's just. It's just.
Most cases, probably.
Yeah, well, it can be mercy in the sense of avoiding a punishment or but it's more of just doing something nice, as it were. It's just giving something. So. So chesed, mercy or kindness. Let's see. Oh, yes. The others I wanted to touch on. Talmid. All right, Talmid. Talmid is a student. It can also be.
The sheet is missing the.
Oh, okay. Yes. So I will correct that online. If your sheet that you have at home is missing a patach vowel, that's my fault for excluding it. It does, in fact, have a patach under that tav. Thank you. Student can also mean disciple. And disciple, of course, is a little more serious of an idea than just a student. But one who studies is a talmid. Talmid is linguistically related to the word Talmud, which is the sort of collection of the teachings of the rabbis, the Talmud. And along with the student, we have moreh. Moreh is a teacher.
Which isn't related to rabbi.
No, Moreh is not related to rabbi. Actually, oddly enough, Moreh is related to Torah. They both come from the same root. The root behind Moreh and Torah is a word that means to throw, or possibly to shoot, like an arrow. And even throw in the sense of point, just point out a direction. So yes, kind of when you dig into the root of the word Torah, it's something that points you in the right direction. And similarly, a teacher points you in a direction. So yes, Moreh is linguistically related to Torah. Rabbi actually means great one. And it's, that's literally what it means. What it means in usage is a teacher, of course, a teacher of Torah. But literally the term rabbi means great one, Ravi. But yeah, it is rabbi. You wouldn't be a rabbi of history or English. You'd be a moreh of a subject besides the Torah. So I am a moreh ivrit, a teacher of Hebrew, or at least of beginning Hebrew and intermediate Hebrew. And if you are studying Hebrew, then you are a talmid ivrit, a student of the Hebrew language. Okay? Yes, talmidim. Right, plural of talmid would be talmidim.
Is there a plural for Greek?
It'd still be talmidim ivrit, because while you are plural, the Hebrew language is not. So it would remain singular. And actually, that's a subject that we'll be covering in the advanced class, which will be at the same time. It's really just a continuation of the intermediate class, but it'll be called Level 3, following the 8-week rotation. So, okay, so that is that. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I can't think of what it is right now. So, are there any questions about anything that I've covered today or last week?
Can't think of any right now.
Okay. Well, I'll just leave a couple of...
Look at it for a while and might come up with something.
Yeah. I'll just leave you with a couple of examples using the things we've learned today. Okay, this is a sentence. Ata babayit. Oops. Right, that's you.
In the house.
That's exactly right. You are in the house. And you is singular and masculine. So this is when I'm talking to one man. You are in the house. All right? And if I were to say atem, a group of men or a mixed group, atem babayit. Both of these would be translated exactly the same way into English. But if I said ata, I'm talking to one man. If I said atem, I'm talking to a group.
Say, there are men in the house.
I would probably say anashim babayit. Men are in the house.
Oh, atem is you, but masculine.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
If I were to say they are in the house,
You. Atem is they. Plural.
right.
Still you. Gotcha.
Masculine singular, masculine plural. And the examples I have on the sheets give lots of different instances of various things. But suppose I was to say, oh, she is coming to the house. That's actually combining pretty much everything into one sentence. Right. He is she, so far so good. Okay, is invisible. Coming. Coming is ba, but since he is feminine, we have to use the feminine form. We have to match the gender of the verb with the gender of the subject. So he, ba'a. Okay.
Is coming
To the house. She is coming to the house is what we're shooting for here.
to la,
Right?
la, ba,
La bayit. Okay. So he ba'a la bayit would mean that she is coming to the house. It's a lot more to think about to say that phrase in Hebrew than in English. Simply because in English we need not match the gender of coming with our subject. And also if I were to say you are coming to the house, well, it depends who I'm talking to as to which version of you I say in Hebrew, but again, in English, I would just say you. Okay, so it is a lot to keep track of, and repetition is really what makes it sink in, just like anything else. But and then if I were to combine just about everything that we've done, well, not quite. It's hard to combine everything, but suppose I was to say, she is coming to the big house. Okay, so we already know she is coming. He ba'a. Yep. So we know that the adjective has to follow the noun that it modifies, so we'll say the noun first. So we'll say she is coming to the house, just like we did before. Okay, but we want a big house, so gadol is big. Okay, bayit is masculine and singular, and gadol is masculine and singular form. However, we do need to remember this is a definite article in front of house. She's coming to the house, to the big house, so we have to put the definite article in front of the adjective as well. So he ba'a babayit hagadol. She is coming to the big house. Okay, so it is, you kind of trip over your feet a bit as you start doing this, but with practice it starts to become more second nature to see these kinds of things. But anyway, you can see why it takes a bit of study before you can just pick up a verse and really interpret it. it's not just a matter of knowing vocabulary, not just a matter of knowing this word means this and that word means that. All these little rules about gender and number and prefixes, they all come into play when we're constructing even pretty basic sentences. So, anyway, practice makes perfect. And I encourage you to read any and every Hebrew text you can find. Just get acquainted with in this class, of course, we're already acquainted with the letters and vowels, but the more you see these prefixes, this ha in front of gadol, this la in front of bayit, and the more you see, okay, we're matching the gender of the subject with the verb, we're matching the gender of something with the adjective, it'll start to really sink in a little better. Okay? So we've covered a lot of material the past 2 weeks, but we'll be using them time and time and time again. So are there any other questions? Okay. Well, next week at this time will be the advanced class, level 3, which is really not any more advanced than level 2, but it does build on level 2. So look forward to seeing you then. Shalom.